Today's guest, Giovanni Brees, has raised $500 million in crowdfunding. So when he built his own SaaS, MeetOscar, he knew something most founders don't.
We even started with a budget of under $5,000. Now we start to increase that once we start to see those pages convert, sub-pages, and then we start to increase the budget.
He made 200 landing pages for 15 target audiences and made meta ads targeted so precisely that signups cost pennies. But that still wasn't enough.
If you made a small deposit of $5, you could go immediately and get better list ranking. So the first validation is people sign up. The second one is they are willing to pay.
Only after people paid did Giovanni build anything. In just over a weekend though, and with zero dev experience.
I'm not a developer whatsoever, zero experience, but I just start creating and start prompting.
He scaled it to $45,000 in monthly recurring revenue in 60 days. But the validation framework is just the beginning. Today, Giovanni reveals when your customers are lying to you about features, how to avoid hiring yourself in a corner, and finally, how to make a SaaS and scale it easily. Let's get into it. I'm Victor, and this is SaaS Mastery. Giovanni, great to have you here.
Great to be here as well. Thank you, Victor.
You're a New York City-based founder, and you strive essentially at the intersection of growth, systems, and rapid validation. That's what you're known for. So for more than a decade, you ran one of the top agencies to launch products, helping to bring more than, it's an astonishing number, 4,500 products to market, generating over $500 million in crowdfunding and direct sales. So through those brands, first Booster campaign and now Max Capital, you have developed a reputation as the guy founders call when they need to test an idea, right? Validate demand, turn that into traction without overbuilding and without burning months in development. So that mindset essentially is what led you to your next success, what we want to talk about today, which is MeetOscar. It's an AI email assistant you originally built to solve your own problem when you were overwhelmed by 100 plus emails a day. So in short, you took that pain, spun up a lean vibe coded MVP, and in just 2 months, it grew to $45,000 in monthly recurring revenue, which is pretty amazing given that you had no big team, no VC funding, just validation, traction, and fast iteration. So today, I want to dig into that framework, how to validate ideas quickly, how to use AI and ads to generate traction, and how founders can avoid the trap you call founders expansion disorder. So Giovanni, I can't wait to unpack this and use MeetOscar as an example for all these topics. So first, let's dive into the biggest mistakes either you have made or you see people make on this journey. So what does everybody get wrong about validation? Why is it so hard and so uncertain? Even let's say after you talk to 20 people and you're like, yeah, that seems like a good idea.
Yeah. So the first thing, a lot of people spend way too much time on the little things that don't matter. For example, a logo. Logo is one of the typical things. They spend weeks on fine-tuning the logo, finding the right colors, finding the right brand name, but they don't really know if their product is actually ready for market and if the feature set they have in mind is relevant for what the market requires. So what I typically do, and I did it for hundreds of different type of brands, is I just type the name of the company, put some 2 nice leaves on top of the logo, and that's my first logo. So it takes me about probably 5 minutes in a PowerPoint, and I literally print screen it and I throw it on a website. That's the first thing. The second part is a lot of people ask friends, family, maybe a business owner they know, but 1 or 2, about their idea that they have, and they call it validation. Now it's not bad to do that, but it's not really the validation we are looking for. So what we normally do, and I did the same for MeetOscar, is before I even build an MVP, we start with a landing page. It's a 1-pager, very simple, very straightforward. Again, don't spend too much time on it. Just share what you need to share and the basic information that you want to bring over to your audience, and then send people to that page. For MeetOscar, we created first 1 landing page. We created a lot of variations of those pages depending on the different audiences. And then we started by having people sign up on a waiting list. So that was our first step. And again, a lot of people go around there. They start building, start adding new features. We are not ready to launch yet, and start continuing that before they even test it. So first, most important part to answer your question, validate, test, and don't spend too much time on fine-tuning everything. Just get a page that converts. If it doesn't convert, look what the main problem is and try again. But don't spend too much time on those moments, but make sure you validate.
Absolutely. How do you then, because as we just established, calling up your grandma and asking her, is that a good idea? Might get you a yes, but might not get you a customer. So what do you do differently to actually test if the landing page converts? Who do you show it to, or how do you get those signups?
Yeah, so the first step is, of course, know really well who you're going to target. For MeetOscar, we had different ideas of audiences, and we actually discovered we never expected B2C to work, and we noticed a lot of people really don't like email. So for their Gmail, for example, B2C, they even wanted to use MeetOscar as well. We then fine-tuned and we found different audiences. We created different pages depending on the audience. That's step one. People sign up, and we used mainly ads, and we used Reddit marketing a lot as well with more organic traffic. So for ads, very simple, we looked at CPL, which is cost per lead. How much did it cost to have one person sign up? Now, signing up is very kind of them, but the second phase is we also did a prepayment and a small pre-order. So there was no application yet. That's very important to know. It was just a waiting list. But what we did is when you signed up, we started at number 1,000. So the first sign up, which was myself, was 1,001, 1,002, and so on. If you made a small deposit of $5, you could go immediately and get better list ranking. That means when we went live, you would be the first to use MeetOscar. What we basically did is when you put $5 down up front, you would already be in the first 100 users that were on the sign up list. Because of that, we then did a second validation. The first validation is people sign up. The second one is they are willing to pay small amount to get access to the app. The third part is when they shared with friends, family, everyone they would like to, they got a referral link. When they had 5 people sign up, they got something in return. And that something in our case would be then, for example, 2 months extra access to MeetOscar for free, but they had to bring people in. That was the important part. So we used that as a second or a third validation phase. Plus, of course, it also helped us to grow our list organically. And then it started all over. Because then people that signed up to the referrals, they then again had the offer to make a $5 payment, start sharing with others, and that's actually how we tested. So beyond sign up, which is important, put some money down is usually really good proof that people really want access.
Okay, wonderful. So many things to unpack here. I love that. So MeetOscar, I think I just haven't mentioned it, basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a tool that's drafting reply emails using AI in your inbox based on the thread and information that they have on the customer and also documents that you upload, right?
Correct, 100%. It's built for email. That's one of the differences. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a layer on top of ChatGPT, although that's how we start to test the MVP. Mm-hmm. We build our own language learning model. But yes, correct.
Okay. And so a lot of people, they say, well, you need to be in an industry, you need to see a certain pain point. You can't just have an idea and then randomly, throw spaghetti at a wall. And you said, no, this is precisely what we're actually going to do. So you had this idea of MeetOscar without a specific target audience in mind initially, and then you said, hey, okay, well, who could use this? Not like anybody, but like who could be very specific ICPs that could use this, right? Is that how I understand it? And then you said, well, that could be, I don't know, lawyers and a few others, and we'll build different landing pages to target those different audiences we think might be interested. And then you would run ads for those. Is that right?
Correct. And the main difference is it's a little bit in the communication style, but it's simple. When you talk to lawyers, well, use lawyers as a picture, for example. Silly things. We targeted support agents because we thought that's going to be our biggest market, which turned out it was not. The lead time to sign them up was also too long. But in the beginning, well, we were wrong. So we also targeted support agents. So we had more people, with the headsets and targeting support agents typically. So each page have their own visuals and a little bit text that's relevant. Now we use Lovable for that. So we created one main page and then we just chatted with Lovable with prompting and said like, hey, create a variation. Here's an image, use that image, create a variation of the page. So we created in the end over 200 pages. Now that's a lot. You don't have to go that far, but we really wanted to test as much as we could. And again, thanks to a Lovable and other quick tools out there, you can make pages as if it's nothing, right? It takes a few minutes to make changes on those pages. So that's what we did.
How many actual different ICPs were those and how many variations per ICP roughly?
Exact number I would have to check, but let's say main groups about 15. Yeah. And then 15. We had some subgroups because taking the lawyer example, well, you have lawyers that are working with their own company, one lawyer, but then you also have lawyers that work in companies, in groups, and you have maybe lawyers lawyers more into insurance, and we really want to point out what is the audience when we build the application we are going after, rather than everyone can use MeetOscar, which theoretically is true, but of course if you say everyone, it's no one and you can't target. So we really start to niche down as much as possible.
Okay, I love that. So you really thought of a lot of different niches, ICPs, but also within those, what different types of people are there? How could we target them? Then you probably, A/B tested CTAs, and you also on those paid ads, what made people click. 200 different landing pages, and probably even A/B tests on those, or at least A/B tests on different calls to actions to those pages. That's a lot of variations. So if I'm thinking about running ads to those, that sounds like a very high budget for a B2B SaaS app. If I do that level of detail and of testing, what do I have to expect to bring with me and throw at Google to get a useful number of visitors so that I can actually say, well, it's not like this page got one visitor, one click, this page got two. That's not statistically significant, right?
Yeah. So how we started it, and well, budget is an important one. So it depends what is your budget availability. Sure. But to talk low budget in this scenario, what we normally do is we start with, for example, 5 pages. Each page has your main, most likely converting audience as the main target. Also there, niche down as much as you can, because the more you can talk to this very specific user, the more accurate you can target, but also your communication will be more relevant for an individual user. Of course, if you go too small, you'll also notice it, because then you might have really good sign-up rates, but very quickly the ad costs start to go up. The CPL in our case, the scenario cost per lead, starts to go up as well, because, well, there are less people in the target audience. Then you might have to open it a little bit, but in the beginning, niche down as much as you can. So we even started with a budget of under $5,000. Now we start to increase that. Once we start to see those pages convert, then we created sub pages, and then we start to increase the budget. But even with a relatively low budget, you can do a lot of testing. Now it depends on your audience you are testing. For us, Meta was actually a really good source. The thing with Meta is a lot of people, for example, on Instagram are scrolling and looking at pictures and so on. So you have to stand out. And for us, color with text worked really well. Not too much text, but just a CTA, a very quick one, or little emojis, no email, plenty of email, and then a happy face, for example. So when people are scrolling, they click, they go to the page. We use some retargeting there as well. People that actually read the page and spent some time on the page, those were the ones we throw in the pixel. A lot of people just put a pixel randomly of Meta, and then they retarget everyone who spent 2 seconds on the page. We don't do that, because that, of course, if you have intention but you don't sign up, it's more about education and building trust. So we did some retargeting. We didn't use Google Ads until we actually went live. Google Ads are great because you have search intent, but the cost is also higher. So we went really low cost in the beginning with Meta ads.
Okay, so you actually started with Meta. I was assuming that was Google Ads from the beginning. Okay, and that's how Meta, you would have used their automated targeting to help you identify the right people too?
No, we really set up the targeting based on the interest, and then we narrowed down very specifically, also on age groups and so on. Locations, of course, is a typical one as well. Google Ads, we did some tests. Thing was, so search intent was great. We got people to the landing page, which is amazing, but then the sign-up rate was less so. And that's because they're looking for something now. Going to a flow of signing up, start sharing, make a prepayment, and wait on the waiting list. For us, at least, we noticed that the cost was too high to get the same result compared to Meta. But again, it depends on your audience. If you would have, let's say, distributors, a very specific audience, and you have an application for distributors, then I would say Google Ads is most likely going to be your best bet compared to Meta ads. So it's worth testing both.
I see. Okay. Going back into your funnel and looking at the next steps. So you have a traffic source, you have an interested ICP, an attractive value proposition, an intriguing call to action, converting landing page, and so people are signing up, and then you already said what you do with those interested signups to further, well, that shows interest, but it doesn't show readiness to buy. And so you're saying you have your wait list set up where it says like, yeah, you can try this, but maybe in a year you're at 1,000, we're letting in like 10 a week or whatever. If you want to jump the queue, here's like what was it, $5 prepayment, right? And that is your actual validation. And this is the number you're then tying to each ICP, probably. So the most important thing is not how many clicks, how many, all of that is like how many prepayments per target group have I received, right? That would have been decision driver.
And then what happens there is, so some groups had a lower sign-up rate, or at least not a sign-up rate, but a prepayment rate, the validation phase there. What we then would do is we send them another email, follow-up email, not selling, but talking about how I use MeetOscar or the application in my own company. So, but that was before we actually had a commercial version, right? So, but that doesn't matter because the user doesn't know. We just talk about how great it would be to have the application. And then we still made them the offer to pay again. Some audiences just need a little bit more time to connect. And that has to do a lot to do with trust. Because we created so many pages, some of the pages, honestly, the footer wasn't really 100% looking the nicest. And then you have people that are a little bit worried to pay online. You see that depending on markets as well. In the US, it's much easier compared to Europe. Europeans tend to be a little bit more sensitive with their credit card details. That means also for European market spaces, we would sometimes add some more emails and then say like, hey, again, we still have the special offer available for $5. You can sign up now. And we saw that those groups actually still increased and got to the same level of some other groups that were just credit card heavier and easier to sign up.
Okay, love that. I want to jump to a product related question, which is, I already touched on this a little bit, but I mentioned that, hey, you're obviously not a lawyer. You may or may not know a lot about the lawyer space, or also about virtual assistants or customer support or things like that. How do you then make sure, okay, you have the interest ready, you have prepayments, right? So that means you have captured some problem. That's fine. Like you have hit something that is a problem that is painful and that they're even willing to prepay to get solved. But how do you then make sure you build a truly useful product once you see that initial interest, that you build the things they really need and you don't build things that they don't need? I feel like that's, especially if you're not deeply in this industry, this is the hardest thing now. What do you think?
It is, and there are two factors. One is what people really need, and then the other thing is the ego of the team and the ideas the team might have, and especially with the creative team, it can go everywhere, right? So we had a problem as well. We were thinking about WhatsApp implementations and Instagram implementation, all the cool stuff there as well, and features they definitely need. But what we then noticed is, so you have people on the waiting list. People start to ask questions as well. You can use that waiting list, a small group of them. Don't blast it out to everyone, but take small groups in those different subsets and say like, hey, we're actually working on some additional feature sets and we're going to launch soon, so you'll be the first to have access and so on. So you always keep enforcing that. What would you think is the most important? Now, for us, it was always very simple. It was the quality of the reply, so they don't have to change the email reply. And the second was security. No WhatsApp, no Instagram, everything else. So we literally dropped everything and then started building the really basic MVP, which was email replies in your own voice. The third element, which then came later, so that was on the list, the third part was that they would, for example, for the lawyers or for the support agents, doesn't matter, audience, that they can upload custom information of their company, pricing, FAQs, whatever it is. So MeetOscar would reply with that information rather than standard ChatGPT information because, well, then they can just throw it in ChatGPT and they get a reply as well. So yes, find your key features, put your ego aside, don't listen always to the tech team, and look at what is the most important, and that's your key feature you start with.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, right? Built something that we thought was useful, but it really wasn't. Do you have any frameworks that you use for like customer discovery or customer personas, or do you use like a value proposition canvas, or do you have any mental models to keep this organized while you work with your different ICPs?
So, well, we have some standard operating procedures, including then the lists of priorities. We don't focus as much on those. Those are actually very simple, where we just send out the email, for example, to the subscriber list and say like, hey, or a part of it, and say like, hey, these are the top 5 features we are building on, and what do you feel is the most important? It's as simple as that part. Now, the second phase is actually more important for us, and that's where a lot of companies in the second phase go wrong. So even if they get funding, or even if they start to launch and they start to get monthly subscribers, so they get cash, then again the feature requirements come in, where people drop in a lot of feature requirements. What we then did, but now I'm already talking about, we had the first version of MeetOscar launched. What we then did is people started asking, oh, I want this and I need this and otherwise I can't use it, and so on and so on. They said, hey, no problem, we have a priority list. If you want for a yearly subscription, so if you pay for a year up front rather than a monthly, we will move your request up in the list. Very quickly, we saw how important that request really was for people. And of course, you also start to get a feel. If 100 people ask the same thing, there might be something to it. Rather than one or two people yelling really hard about a feature they definitely need, 100% need, but then they're not willing to pay a little bit for it. It's actually not really paying. It's more they take upfront 1 year, which we use as a validation, but it's already the second phase.
For sure, it's definitely a bigger commitment, even though they're not paying more over time. Given today's trends, really, I was not surprised at all to hear that you vibe coded your first prototype.
Yes.
What tool did you use? Was that Lovable as well for the main product? Was it Lovable?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, Lovable, we did a little bit with Replit as well for front screens and so on afterwards, but I started over the weekend in Lovable in my way. So I'm not a developer whatsoever, zero experience, but I just started creating and start prompting. At least I'm good in prompting, and start to create the front end, and then of course use API. So at the beginning, the first MVP we launched was really connected to ChatGPT's API. So it was very simple. The API key was pretty easy to hack and get publicly access to. So it was the most simple version you can imagine. That was the first version I launched. But again, for that purpose was plenty.
I see. Would you recommend a different tool today? You mentioned that that was back then. You're looking into Replit. What is your current take on this?
It's a tricky one. So I'm so used to Lovable, so I keep using Lovable, but it's just habit. And there's the power of habit that wins. I think it's very important if you're starting now, just look what Replit does, what Bolt does, what Lovable does, and look at how far they are. There is so much change and everyone catches up but then has one jump ahead of the other. It really depends. In my case, again, it's just I'm so used to it, I keep using it for now.
Yeah, I'm used to Lovable and then also Cursor, depending on do I want to jump
Cursor
into
as well.
code, do I want to not jump into code. I have never used Replit, but from what I've heard, it's very much in between. Like you can get more technical than with Lovable, but you don't have to be a full developer like with Cursor. But also, if anybody knows, happy to get corrected on this one. What do you think, say, Lovable or other tools, what they excel at, but what are their limitations when building MVP?
Yeah, so the main problem was security, right? So that's one of the difficult things. It's pretty in the open, a lot of things, especially if you're not a developer, you don't have any idea what a code is about. So I noticed very quickly that, well, literally everything was in the open. For an email tool, for example, that's not the best approach, and we would never be able to get CASA approved for Google, for example, and these kind of things. And then let's talk again about lawyers. Well, we did have a security issue there in the beginning. So I think security is one of the main problems. And then the second part is, but that depends on your developer skill as well, of course. If you are not a developer like myself, well, you just kind of build blocks on blocks and blocks to keep a nice structure and overview of what you're building and how they're interlinking. And then if you make one change, how that actually influences the other. I was just kind of building walls and trashing down other walls, and then trying to fix whatever was not working. But then I got further in a loophole of having more problems that I created. So I think that's one of the main issues compared to if you're a developer, especially, you have a nice structure, you have a nice ecosystem, and you can build it much better. But security is the main issue.
I would agree. Yeah. Obviously, yes, when you're a developer, you can influence certain things, but also to a certain extent. Yeah. Iterations. That's the biggest issue, I feel like, as well. Cursor and others have gotten slightly better at this, taking in more context. Lovable, not too much. So I would agree. But for prototypes and your first MVP, oh my God, is it good. Let's talk about your launch now. You have your wait list, you have you fired up Lovable, you've built that first iteration, you have just validated what the initial feature set has to be and for whom you're building it. How did you then launch it? Like, what happened once you had this thing working in Lovable, you tested it? What were your steps to generate the 45K in MRR?
So a couple of things. First of all, we start to release the wait list, of course. That's the easy part. We also offered upsells where they can become a VIP member, which was much more than putting VIP in front of certain words like VIP support, for example. But then they paid more, so that was great to test and to see as well. And then the second part, we started, of course, to increase ad spend. That was the important one. We made a decision, every dollar that comes in, we throw into ads. So we really focus purely on scaling and growing as fast as we can. Another tool that we started using was Reddit. So we started to post in Reddit, engage with people in Reddit, go broader in thinking pattern as well. So we didn't always just throw MeetOscar out there, but we literally helped people asking about task switching, for example. One of the typical problems in B2B is for a lot of people is they are doing one thing, then quickly go to email, then go to something else. Oh, another email comes in, start replying. Your focus. So we had articles and information about task switching, how bad it is, and how to solve that problem. And then, of course, MeetOscar would come up as one of the solutions for that as well. So more natural flow. That helped us a lot. We were able to build it out pretty quickly. And then ads. Ads really helped us. We didn't do as much influencer outreach as we should have done, because that would have been a third building party where we could have, of course, get more visibility and reviews and so on. So we went mainly on ads and on Reddit outreach and Reddit marketing.
Okay, and you added Google Ads into the mix after you launched, as you said. Okay, cool. That makes sense. And then what's a good long-term strategy? I see a lot of people do that in the middle, right? And then long-term, you go more organic, content-based SEO. Is that something that you're planning to do now that growth is getting more stable?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. So we are working on the content side. Again, a lot now. See through our UTM tags that more and more referrals are coming also from ChatGPT, for example. So we have been doing a lot in the Reddit side again. We're now working on a Wikipedia page, which is not the easiest, but to get as much information also from us in Reddit. So in ChatGPT, for example, for searches. So that's one of the things we are working on. And then, of course, typical SEO. So with the links and with the articles and offering quality articles. So we are preparing the post to go live in the next weeks. Every week, a few posts that we'll be launching, long copy posts and so on and so on. So yes, definitely. That's a longer term game. Influencer side is another one that we are now working as well. And then again, ads really keep working nicely. And referrals. So people that sign up and are happy are a great source to then share with friends, family, other colleagues. And in return for bringing in people, they get a discount on their next MeetOscar. They actually get 3 months. So per person they bring in that signs up, that's important, they get 1 month for free. And we see that that actually helps a lot to keep growing as well our whole business. Plus each interaction, because we're not really selling to them, we notice that people are nicer in terms of replies. They will ask me some additional questions or ask us as a team some additional questions, maybe some tips and suggestions, and they get more and more kind of hooked in as part of the company in a way, rather than just paying each month.
I love that. Have you thought about utilizing your viral loop opportunity with email? I don't know if freemium, but it says in the email that that's what is written with MeetOscar. I presume no paying lawyer client would ever want to have that, but
correct.
Maybe there's a way to utilize that. I think that could be killer growth.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. We thought about it. I think Dropbox and so on did it in the past. Yes, the only
but it's
thing
not as
for
easy,
us,
right? Yeah.
Yes, and like you also mentioned, some audiences would not really appreciate it. Of course, you can have a separate button to turn it on, and then other by default is turned off. It's not that easy yet, but we are thinking about it. It would be great, slow hanging fruit, especially in the B2C market space, because they're great. And then offer it as a freemium solution. But we're not out there yet how to implement it for the whole market space without having some problems with other customers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe somehow, because I see the trust issue here. Let's go back to product. We were just talking about the limits of vibe code, and so vibe coding things. And so what was the breaking point when you figured, hey, I need to work with a developer. I can't keep vibe coding. And how did you approach that? Who did you start working with?
So for us, it was pretty early in. And so we started to have some limitations in terms of me trying to solve stuff and then getting blocked and, ruining more than I actually fixed. But that was then one part. Also, it's not my focus point, so it's not healthy to keep doing that. But then the second part was we needed, for example, Casa 2 approval from Google. And forget about going that route if you have something built in my case, in Lovable. So I needed very quickly a developer to build our own platform, our own version. The other part was also that we noticed, depending on what ChatGPT does in an update, MeetOscar would also be better or worse off, right? Using those annoying hyphens, for example, and these kind of typical things that ChatGPT does. So we didn't want it anymore. And we also noticed that, email replies could be great, spot on, or not. The problem was the or not, we couldn't really do much about it because, we can prompt against it, but then other people would have a problem. So what we then decided is it's time for our own language learning model. It's time to build something custom. So security was one of the major first steps issues, where people would ask, okay, what's your security level? We can't really have anything. And then also, of course, to give easy access to Gmail, where you just click approve with your Gmail rather than going through loopholes, what we had in the beginning, we needed Casa 2 approval. So that was for us, we didn't have any other option. but then also product improvement, right? The more users on board, we start to get more problems. People say, hey, the reply is not really good anymore. And that was ChatGPT that changed, not us, but well, it's the result. So we needed to come up with something new.
Got it. And did you hire a developer? Did you work with a software house? Did you get a co-founder? What's the route that you've taken so far?
In my case, co-founder, I like to sign up with co-founders as everyone has their strength. And as long as you have the right co-founder, because there's much to say about finding the wrong one, but if you have the right one, everyone drives to the same goal. So you double basically your capacity and your willingness to really make it happen. In my case, it's also a friend by now, so that's great. Until now, you never know in business. But from a developer perspective, so he's a developer specifically for AI and has been working with language learning models for many different companies. The nice part, and it's a lucky part, is that university students, which are his friends now, also helped us overnight and in the weekends and so on to really build out. So we didn't really have to go to any, let's call it third-party solution. We did everything in-house by adding people, whatever we could find. Then, of course, because we needed some more stability rather than saying, okay, we have a bug, sorry, dear customer, we can't help you because we can only work on Saturday. We needed to hire, of course, people. So then we start to hire as well.
How big is your team right now?
6 people on the developer side and 3 in the marketing side and 2 support. Support, actually, most of it is AI support, so that's great. But we still need some support for the bigger companies we work with.
For sure. That makes sense. Do you feel you're already at product market fit, or is there still a way to go?
Now we come with new ideas, right? So now we see new opportunities in new market spaces where we see the opportunities to build out, for example, Instagram chat for smaller businesses, link them to their stock orders, for example, and these kind of things. So you don't have to chat anymore with your customers, but MeetOscar takes over, looks if items are in stock, replies, and these kind of things. So now we are just building out a more robust solution with more options and features as well. Of course, we also know that email and all the native language learning models, for example, for Gmail, are also catching up. So we do have to make sure that we keep growing and build something that's bigger than only email replies.
Okay. And have you been profitable from day one or spending everything on ads? What is it right now?
Now we are definitely profitable. By far, our costs are pretty low and we scale nicely in terms of return on ad spend and so on. In the beginning, well, it depends how you look at it. We didn't take salaries out, so in theory, that's a negative. But we were actually pretty profitable from the launch moment onwards. As we, even in the pre-launch, because of the small payments, we paid back a big part of our ad spend. Now, those were relatively small amounts, right? But what I just want to say, even if you don't have a big budget, you could launch and you don't have to worry and try to find $50,000. It does speed up things definitely if you spend them right, but you could do a lot with a low budget. And then for us, as soon as we launched, we were profitable, but okay, we reinvested everything we could just to scale faster.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I really want to pick your brain on some mindset and questions. The story and journey of a founder, right, is never a straight line. And so can you share, a story about like a low point in your entrepreneurial career, a moment where, things almost fell apart, what you learned from that?
Mm-hmm. I have many, but for other companies, so I've been through them. That means for MeetOscar, they're not as much. But one of the typical things that I had is you have a lot of ego problems where you think you can manage everything and then it turns out you cannot. Second typical thing that I noticed is when I then started hiring in the beginning is I would always go low budget because, well, I wasn't on low budget. But I kept that mindset for many years afterwards. So even when we started to be really profitable, I would increase my salary, but I would always I would help everyone and everyone got a better salary, but I didn't hire A players. Now, once I finally learned to hire A players, then I actually got ego hit once again because some of my A players were way better at things than I was. So one of the typical loopholes one of the typical things that I had is was getting stuck with finding people that could do the job, but rather than people that would come in and just change part of the business and really go to the next level. So I was kind of caught in that loop of hiring, but then kind of managing. By hiring more people, I had more problems as well. So I keep stuck and I was almost an employee in my own company. I don't do that anymore. So now I try to hire as soon as I can an A player before I pay myself out and then have that person take over as much as I can to avoid me becoming an employee in my own company, but really take leadership role. I have things that I'm great at. I have things that I shouldn't be touching. And I have things that I'm good at, but I don't like doing. That counts for me as I shouldn't be touching them either. So I stay away as much as I can from those. So hire when you can and hire well. I think that's a typical thing. And one more is also what I typically notice with a lot of people we work with and that I did myself as a mistake. Hiring is one, but then firing, take time to hire, but fire quickly. It's always hard, especially with your first team members, even if they're really they are not a good fit, just fire them as soon as possible, because you keep draining it out. It keeps draining money and energy. And I have been doing that with some people in the beginning. I could keep them a year on, but I would just be annoyed every single day, right? So don't do that.
And it affects everybody else at the company too, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can people find MeetOscar if they want to sign up? Anything else that you want to share with our audience?
Probably plenty and so many, but we have a limited time. But if they want to find MeetOscar, meetoscar.com. Very easy. We have free trials so they can try it out. And then me, well, I just started. I have giovannibrees.com. Use my website, so if you have any questions, you can always reach out.
Love that. Giovanni, thank you so much for coming on.
With pleasure. Thank you very much.
That was an incredible breakdown from Giovanni. Here are my 3 favorite takeaways from this episode. Number 1, stop obsessing over tiny things at the start. Giovanni calls this the founder's expansion disorder. He only spent 5 minutes on the logo and PowerPoint, and your first job isn't to build a brand. It's to prove someone will pay. So stop wasting weeks on things that don't matter and test your idea. Number 2, validation isn't a yes, it's a prepayment. This is the key. Giovanni didn't just get waitlist signups. He charged people $5 to jump the queue before he had a product. A waitlist shows interest, but remember, a credit card shows commitment, and commitment is what we want. And 3, vibe code your MVP, but reinvest everything. As you saw, Giovanni is a non-technical founder who built his first version in Lovable. It really wasn't perfect, but it was fast. That speed, combined with reinvesting everything back into ads and later on into an actual rewrite, is what fueled that insane growth to $45,000 in monthly recurring revenue in just 2 months. But if you're sitting on a SaaS idea right now and you're not technical and thinking, okay, but where do I actually start? That's exactly why we built SaaS Mastery. We help non-technical founders go from idea to launch in 2 to 6 months. If you're curious, check out the first link in the description. All right, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.